Welcome to Forgotten History Daily. I am William, and tonight we journey into one of history's most fascinating and darkest stories, the vanishing of Roanoke Colony, a haunting enigma that has puzzled scholars for centuries. Imagine a small band of English settlers, brave pioneers of Queen Elizabeth's dream of establishing a foothold on the uncharted shores of North America. It was the year 1585, a time when the New World was still a distant prospect, full of promise and peril. These colonists, numbering around 100 souls, had set sail from England, bound for Roanoke Island in what is now Dare County, North Carolina. Led by John White, an artist and cartographer of some renown, they were determined to stake their claim on this untamed wilderness. But little did they know that their settlement would become the stuff of legend, a chilling mystery that has captured the imagination of historians and armchair detectives ever since. And here's the astonishing truth. When John White finally returned to Roanoke after a 3-year absence, he found his colony had vanished into thin air. Not a single soul remained. The only clue was a faint, cryptic message scrawled on a tree croatone. These were the very words inscribed by John White himself before he set sail for England in 1587 to fetch more supplies and settlers. But what did they mean? Were they a desperate cry for help from his own people, or a cunning ruse concocted by someone else entirely? As we delve into this enigmatic tale, we'll explore the complex web of events that led up to the disappearance of Roanoke Colony. We'll encounter the infamous Sir Walter Raleigh, sponsor of John White's ill-fated expedition, and the driving force behind England's early colonization efforts in North America. We'll also examine the tantalizing possibility that these English settlers may have encountered a powerful Algonquian tribe, whose chief, Manteo, had initially welcomed them to his shores. In the years ahead, as we uncover the intricate details of this mystery, we'll unravel threads of treachery, betrayal, and ultimately, perhaps, find ourselves at the very limits of human comprehension. On the coast of what is now North Carolina, in the year 1585, a small English colony was established on Roanoke Island. The endeavor was a joint venture between Sir Walter Raleigh and several prominent investors who saw an opportunity to establish a foothold in the New World. As we set our sights on this pivotal moment in history, let's immerse ourselves in the sights and sounds of 16th century England. The air is thick with the smells of coal smoke, fresh bread, and horse dung as people go about their daily business. It's August 1584, and Queen Elizabeth I sits upon her throne, a nation-building queen who sees the New World as a means to expand her power and riches. In this era of great upheaval, when the Renaissance is in full swing and the Protestant Reformation is reshaping European society, we find ourselves on the cusp of a major cultural shift. The world is shrinking rapidly due to the introduction of the printing press, allowing ideas to spread more quickly than ever before. But amidst this change, there's a sense of unease. England is embroiled in a war with Spain, and the threat of Catholicism looms large. Against this backdrop, we find John White, an artist and cartographer who has been tasked by Sir Walter Raleigh to lead an expedition to Roanoke Island. He arrives at Plymouth in September 1585, armed with a plan to establish a settlement that would secure England's position in the New World. Over 100 men set sail on board 3 ships, the Lion, the Tiger, and the Swan, bound for the shores of what is now North Carolina. The journey across the Atlantic is grueling, with rough seas and constant threats from Spanish galleons patrolling the waters. John White's daughter, Elena Dare, gives birth to a baby girl while they are at sea, a rare occurrence given the harsh conditions. The colonists finally arrive on Roanoke Island in August 1587, exhausted but optimistic. As we step into this world of colonial endeavor, let's examine the society that has been established on Roanoke Island. It's a community of Englishmen, primarily from the countryside, who have come seeking adventure and economic opportunity. Many are from small towns like Wakefield and Lincolnshire, where they've heard tales of gold and fertile land. Among them is John White's granddaughter, Virginia Dare, born to Elena and Ananias Dare in 1587. She becomes a significant figure in the story of Roanoke Colony. This little community quickly establishes itself on the island, building homes from local wood and establishing basic systems for farming and fishing. But there are tensions beneath the surface. Relations with the native Algonquian-speaking people begin to fray due to disagreements over land ownership and trading practices. It's a delicate situation that John White attempts to mediate as he negotiates a treaty with Chief Manteo, an influential Algonquian leader who has allied himself with the English. The winter of 1587–88 proves disastrous for Roanoke colony. Supplies dwindle, and tensions between the colonists and the native people escalate. John White leaves to secure more supplies from England in January 1588, but finds his return blocked by the Spanish warship that had been patrolling the coast since 1585. White is forced to remain in England for 3 years, unable to rescue his daughter's family or secure the future of Roanoke colony. Meanwhile, back on Roanoke Island, signs begin to emerge that something has gone horribly wrong. Abandoned homes and tools are discovered with no sign of struggle or conflict. It's as if the entire colony vanished into thin air. When John White finally arrives in 1590, he finds an eerie silence where once there was a thriving community. The word Croatone is carved into a tree, seemingly a message from his granddaughter's family, but what does it mean? Were they searching for help or simply leaving behind a clue as to their whereabouts? As we try to unravel the mystery of Roanoke colony, we find ourselves at a crossroads in history. The lost colony remains an enigma that continues to captivate us today. Did they succumb to disease, starvation, or internal strife? Or was it something more sinister? One theory suggests that the colonists may have been absorbed into the local Algonquian tribe, which would explain the disappearance of all signs of English culture. Another theory proposes that the group might have moved to a nearby island, where some evidence suggests an English settlement once existed. Historians continue to debate this enigma, each shedding new light on what happened on Roanoke Island in 1590. Some see it as a cautionary tale about colonialism and the devastating consequences of displacing indigenous populations. Others view it as a testament to human resilience and adaptability. Can we really imagine these resourceful pioneers embracing a new life among their native neighbors? Whatever the truth may be, one thing is certain. On that fateful summer morning in 1590, when John White arrived at Roanoke Island, something momentous had occurred. The once thriving colony was gone, leaving behind only fragments of its presence and an enduring mystery that continues to captivate us today. We're now standing on the shores of a place where history's secrets have been etched into the sand for over 400 years. The winds howl across Roanoke Island as we search for clues about what really happened here. But as the sun dips towards the horizon, casting a golden glow over this haunting landscape, we are reminded that sometimes, even with meticulous research and modern forensic tools, some mysteries will forever remain shrouded in uncertainty. As the stars begin to twinkle overhead, we reflect on John White's remarkable journey, his boundless optimism, his fierce determination, and his heartbreaking loss. What happened to those 118 men, women, and children? Did they face disaster, disease, or treachery? The truth may be hidden from us forever, but as we look out at this windswept island, one thing is clear. Roanoke's tragic story remains an indelible part of our collective history, a testament to the enduring power of human endeavor and the inescapable allure of the unknown. The year was 1584, and the air was alive with whispers of a new world waiting to be discovered. Sir Walter Raleigh's vision of an English colony in the New World was about to become a reality. A plan had been hatched to establish a foothold on Roanoke Island, off the coast of present-day North Carolina. This would be the first English settlement in what is now the United States. The colonists who set sail from Plymouth, England, were an ambitious bunch. They consisted of 100 men, women, and children, all eager to stake their claim on this untrodden land. Among them was a group of soldiers, farmers, and craftsmen, each with their own unique skills to contribute to the colony's success. Leading the expedition was Sir John White, Raleigh's trusted friend and advisor. A seasoned explorer and mapmaker, White had spent years studying the New World, poring over maps and gathering intelligence from other explorers. He was convinced that Roanoke Island was the perfect location for a colony, providing access to fertile soil, abundant resources, and a prime spot for trade with the native population. As the fleet sailed into the harbor of Roanoke Island on July 22, 1585, the colonists were greeted by a mixture of excitement and trepidation. They had been warned about the dangers that lay ahead: hostile Native Americans, disease-ridden waterways, and the ever-present threat of mutiny. John White's own wife, Elena Dare, was among the colonists. A skilled weaver and needlewoman, she would go on to play a pivotal role in the colony's history. Their young daughter, Virginia Dare, born just months before their departure from England, was now facing the unforgiving environment of the New World. White himself had been given permission by Queen Elizabeth I to establish an English presence in the Americas, and he took his duties as governor very seriously. The Queen's instructions were clear. White was to establish a foothold on Roanoke Island, gather intelligence on the local Native American tribes, and search for gold and other valuable resources. However, White's own experiences had prepared him for the challenges that lay ahead. A former member of Raleigh's council, he had spent years navigating the complex web of court politics in London, but nothing could have prepared him for the harsh realities of life on Roanoke Island. As we fast forward to August 1585, White returned to England, tasked with gathering more supplies and recruits for the colony. He was away from Roanoke for a staggering 2 years, leaving behind his wife and daughter in the care of a small group of men. These were the days when the fledgling colony was at its most vulnerable. Meanwhile, back on the island, things began to unravel. The colonists struggled to adapt to their new surroundings: the sweltering heat, the isolation from the old world, and the ever-present threat of starvation. Supplies ran low, and tensions rose as arguments broke out among the men over who was to blame for the colony's problems. In White's absence, leadership fell to a small group of councillors, including Thomas Woodhouse, John Watson, and George Percy. They were tasked with keeping the colony on track while their governor was away, but they soon found themselves struggling to maintain order. Woodhouse, a burly soldier with a dubious reputation, became increasingly obsessed with the idea that the Native Americans were plotting against them. His warnings of impending attack only added to the growing unease among the colonists. Little did they know, however, that their biggest challenge was still on its way in the form of an unseen threat from beyond the horizon. As we now know, White's return to Roanoke Island would be too little too late. He arrived in August 1590, but instead of finding a thriving colony, he stumbled upon something far more sinister. The word Croatoan carved into a tree caught his eye, the only clue left behind by the colonists as to what had become of them. White's search for answers would be fruitless, and the mystery surrounding Roanoke's fate has endured for centuries. But we'll delve deeper into that story in our next episode, exploring the theories, legends, and evidence that have captivated historians and enthusiasts alike. The tale of the lost colony is one that still sends shivers down the spine today, a testament to the human spirit's capacity for resilience and survival against all odds. Let us take a moment to reflect on these events, the key players, and their motivations. We've followed the story so far, setting the stage for the tragic unfolding of events that would leave one colony abandoned forever in the New World. The year is 1587, and a sense of excitement and trepidation fills the air as a group of English settlers steps off the ship onto the sandy shores of Roanoke Island. This was to be the first permanent English settlement in North America, established by Sir Walter Raleigh's venture into the New World. The colonists, led by John White, an artist and cartographer, had been recruited from across England with promises of a new life and untold riches. As they set up their makeshift village, the settlers were optimistic about their prospects. They named their settlement Roanoke, after the local Algonquian-speaking tribe who inhabited the area. The Native Americans, or Indians as the English called them, had been friendly towards the newcomers, even allowing them to establish trade relationships and teaching them essential skills for survival in the harsh environment. However, little did the settlers know that their adventure was about to take a drastic turn for the worse. John White, who had brought his family with him to Roanoke, set off on an expedition back to England to fetch more supplies and new colonists. He departed in August 1587, leaving behind his wife, Elena, and their newborn daughter, Virginia Dare, the first English child born in North America. As John White sailed across the Atlantic, he was unaware of the turmoil brewing in England. Queen Elizabeth I had grown increasingly concerned about the financial burden of maintaining colonies in the New World. With war raging against Spain, resources were scarce, and the government began to reassess its priorities. Sir Walter Raleigh, who had invested heavily in the Roanoke venture, found himself falling out of favour with the Queen. Meanwhile, back on Roanoke Island, John White's absence proved disastrous for the colonists. As winter approached, supplies began to run low and tensions rose among the settlers. They struggled to adapt to the harsh climate, which was vastly different from anything they had experienced in England. The Native American allies who had helped them establish their settlement began to withdraw, wary of the English presence. On January 6, 1590, a group of colonists, including Elena White and her daughter Virginia, gathered on the beach to await John White's return. They had been waiting for over 2 years, but as the seasons passed, hope began to dwindle. The settlers had constructed a palisade around their village, hoping to protect themselves from potential threats, but it was little more than a flimsy barrier against the elements. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, something sinister began to unfold on Roanoke Island. It started with small things. Tools went missing, food stores dwindled, and the atmosphere became increasingly tense. Then, as spring approached, the unthinkable happened. The colonists vanished without a trace. In July 1590, John White finally arrived back at Roanoke Island, exhausted from his long journey across the Atlantic. He was met with an eerie silence, broken only by the howling wind and the cries of seagulls overhead. As he made his way through the abandoned village, he discovered signs of a struggle: furniture knocked over, doors smashed, and graffiti scrawled on the walls. White crosses, a symbol left behind by the colonists, indicated that they had fled under duress, but where did they go? The only clue was a small wooden cross carved into the bark of a nearby tree, bearing an inscription, Croatoan. It was as if the settlers had intentionally left behind a cryptic message pointing to their fate. Croatoan Island, located just off the coast of Roanoke, became the focus of White's search for his family and fellow colonists. He set sail towards the island, where he encountered the Native Americans who claimed to have sheltered the English settlers. However, it soon became clear that something was amiss. The Croatoans told White that they had indeed taken in the English colonists, but claimed they had abandoned them when a massive hurricane ravaged the coast, destroying their village and killing many of its inhabitants. The storm, one of the worst in recorded history, left a trail of devastation across the Outer Banks, leaving many to wonder whether it was more than just a natural disaster. White spent months trying to unravel the mystery surrounding his family's disappearance, but the truth remained elusive. He eventually concluded that his wife and daughter had perished during the hurricane or had fallen victim to some other tragedy. The fate of John White himself remains shrouded in mystery. Did he die on Croatoan Island or manage to return to England? The loss of Roanoke colony sent shockwaves across England, prompting a wave of criticism against Sir Walter Raleigh's venture and his failure to provide adequate support for the colonists. As the news spread, it became apparent that Raleigh's reputation was irreparably damaged. Despite numerous attempts to recreate the story of Roanoke colony on film and in literature, the truth about what happened remains lost forever. One can only speculate as to whether the English settlers were simply overwhelmed by the harsh conditions, or if they had indeed succumbed to some more sinister force, perhaps even the very Native Americans who had initially welcomed them. In the centuries that followed, numerous excavations on Roanoke Island uncovered evidence of the colony's presence: scraps of furniture, cooking vessels, and remnants of human remains. Yet, no definitive proof has been found to shed light on the disappearance of the colonists. The mystery lingers, fueling imagination and debate among historians, scholars, and the public alike. Today, as we stand on the windswept shores of Roanoke Island, surrounded by the whispers of history, it is impossible not to feel a sense of awe at the trials faced by those early settlers who dared to venture into the New World. Their fate serves as a poignant reminder that even in the face of uncertainty and adversity, humanity's resilience and determination can sometimes be its greatest weakness. In the quiet hours before dawn, when the mist begins to rise from the Atlantic waters, and the creaking trees stand sentinel on the sandy beach, it is not hard to envision the Roanoke colonists standing amidst their abandoned village, searching for answers that might never come. Their story serves as a haunting reminder of the unforgiving nature of history, one that whispers secrets to those willing to listen, but ultimately leaves us with more questions than we began with. The disappearance of the lost colony of Roanoke remains an enigma, forever etched in the annals of history like a cryptic message left on the windswept shores of North America. The year was 1587. The English colony on Roanoke Island, nestled in the Outer Banks of what is now North Carolina, had been established just a few years prior by Sir Walter Raleigh. It seemed like an audacious endeavor at the time to plant a foothold for England's burgeoning empire in this vast and largely uncharted new world. John White, the colony's governor, had arrived on Roanoke Island with his wife, Elena Dare, and their baby daughter, Virginia. The initial settlement was thriving, but as the seasons passed, tensions began to rise between the colonists and the local Algonquian tribe. There were disputes over resources, misunderstandings, and ultimately, a breakdown in communication. Governor White's own fate became intertwined with that of the colony when he decided to embark on a journey back to England to procure more supplies. This was in 1585, 5 years before his family would vanish. Little did he know at the time, but his departure would have far-reaching consequences for the colony he left behind. As White set sail across the treacherous waters of the Atlantic, he carried with him a precious cargo of hope and optimism for the future of Roanoke Island. He also brought letters from prominent members of English society, pleading with Elizabeth I to provide more support for the struggling colony. These pleas fell on deaf ears. Meanwhile, back in England, White's family had no idea that their lives were about to take a dramatic turn for the worse. The colonists' homes on Roanoke Island were slowly being abandoned as they prepared for the governor's return. A message carved into the bark of a tree stood as testament to the colony's desperation. Croatoan, a phrase believed by historians to refer to the nearby island of Hatteras, and possibly even the local Algonquian tribe that resided there. What actually happened on Roanoke Island during this pivotal period remains shrouded in mystery. One thing is certain, however: John White never returned from his ill-fated journey to England. The years passed by with no sign of him or the colony he left behind. The arrival of English explorers in 1590 marked the beginning of a new era for Roanoke Island. Sir Walter Raleigh himself sponsored an expedition led by Philip Amadas and Arthur Barlow, who were tasked with uncovering what had become of White's family and the lost colony. Upon their arrival on Roanoke Island, they found no sign of life, just abandoned homes and a cryptic message scrawled into the sand: Croatoan. Some historians have interpreted this as an indication that the colonists may have intermingled with the Algonquian tribe. Others argue that it was simply a message left for John White, should he return to find his colony in disarray. Despite searching every inch of Roanoke Island and nearby Croatoan Island, there was no conclusive evidence to support either theory. The true fate of the colonists remained a mystery that would haunt historians for centuries to come. Theories abounded, from mass hysteria to abduction by Native American tribes. In fact, some have pointed fingers at John White himself, suggesting that his prolonged absence and delayed return may have led to an untimely demise. These wild speculations only served to deepen the enigma surrounding Roanoke Island's lost colony. One of the most intriguing aspects of this case lies in the testimony of a mysterious Algonquian chief named Manteo. This man was a crucial figure, known for his complex relationship with both the English and Native American communities. According to accounts by Sir Walter Raleigh himself, Manteo claimed that he had been friendly towards John White during his initial visits, but later turned against him due to perceived injustices. Some historians argue that this change in allegiance may have ultimately led to the colonists' downfall. It is possible, therefore, that the colony's failure was not solely a product of chance or circumstance, but rather a direct result of internal conflicts and shifting alliances between English settlers and Native American tribes. We will never know for certain what really happened on Roanoke Island all those years ago. The truth has been obscured by time, hidden behind layers of mythology and guesswork. One thing is clear: the loss of this colony marked a turning point in England's attempts to establish its colonial empire. It demonstrated that these early ventures into the New World were fraught with danger and uncertainty. In 1591, Sir Walter Raleigh, the man who had sponsored Roanoke Island's founding, found himself at odds with Elizabeth I over his ambitious plans for English colonization. Raleigh was imprisoned in the Tower of London on suspicion of treason. It wasn't until his release from prison some years later that he was able to salvage some aspects of his empire-building ambitions. Despite this setback, England continued its expansion into North America, marking a milestone in world history with Jamestown's establishment in 1607. This pivotal moment would ultimately prove more successful than Roanoke Island's ill-fated colony, giving birth to the United States we know today. Yet the question of what exactly happened on Roanoke Island in those fateful years remains one that refuses to be silenced. It's a haunting reminder that even in the face of unyielding curiosity and relentless inquiry, some secrets may forever remain lost to history. It was over 450 years ago when John White set sail for England, leaving behind his family on Roanoke Island. In the intervening centuries, countless theories have emerged about the colonists' disappearance. Their fate has become a testament to human ingenuity and determination in the face of uncertainty. The Lost Colony of Roanoke continues to captivate our imagination with its tangled web of mystery and conjecture. The Lost Colony of Roanoke, a mystery that has fascinated historians and armchair detectives alike for centuries. On a windswept island off the coast of North Carolina, a group of English settlers vanished without a trace, leaving behind only cryptic clues and tantalizing hints about their fate. It's July 1587, and John White, an artist and cartographer, has arrived at Roanoke Island with his family. He's been tasked by Sir Walter Raleigh to establish a colony in the New World. As White sets up home on Roanoke, he becomes fast friends with the local Algonquian tribe who provide him with vital support and supplies. But John White is not just any ordinary settler. Born in 1540, he's a seasoned adventurer with a keen eye for cartography. His watercolors of Native American life will become some of the earliest European depictions of the New World. Yet despite his artistic talents and logistical expertise, White's greatest skill may be as a storyteller. He has an uncanny ability to weave tales that captivate his audience, earning him a reputation as one of the most gifted raconteurs of his time. White's friendship with Manteo, a young Algonquian prince, is particularly noteworthy. The two men bond over their shared love of exploration and adventure. As White navigates the complexities of establishing a new colony, he finds himself torn between loyalty to his fellow settlers and his duty to report back to Raleigh in England. But as we delve deeper into this enigmatic tale, another figure emerges, that of Elena Dare, John White's daughter-in-law, a member of the ill-fated Roanoke colony. She will play a crucial role in unraveling the mystery of what happened to her family and friends. Born in 1580, Elena is an accomplished young woman with a talent for writing. She marries Ananias Dare, John White's son, in a quiet ceremony on Roanoke Island. Ananias, it seems, was a bit of a rough diamond, a rugged outdoorsman with a strong sense of duty and adventure. He'd spent years working on Raleigh's expeditions to the New World before settling down on Roanoke Island. As he and Elena build their new life together, they are blessed with a baby girl named Virginia. But amidst this idyllic scene of family and community lies an undercurrent of tension. Relations between the English settlers and the Algonquian tribe begin to fray as White prepares to leave Roanoke Island for England in search of supplies. He's been gone nearly 2 years, leaving behind a small group of men to keep the colony running. The Algonquian leader, Wingina or Pemiscot, proves to be a pivotal figure in this drama. Born around 1550, he's a seasoned warrior and diplomat who has learned to navigate the complexities of European politics. As White prepares to depart Roanoke, Wingina grows increasingly wary of the English presence on his lands. It's 1590 when John White finally returns to Roanoke Island after an absence of over 2 years. He arrives to find that his colony has vanished without a trace, no sign of them, their homes, or even any evidence of struggle. The only clue is a cryptic message carved into a tree, Croatoan, the name of another nearby island where Wingina's tribe had its principal village. John White searches the island in despair, unable to comprehend what has happened to his family and friends. He eventually sets off for England with this single word etched on his mind, determined to unravel the mystery of the lost colony. But as he sails across the Atlantic, a new concern emerges. Where will he find the resources to resupply his lost colony, now that Raleigh's expedition has been dealt a crushing blow by the Algonquian tribe? We're not told what happened to Elena Dare and her family, or how they vanished into thin air, but clues suggest that tensions between the English settlers and the local tribes were running high as White prepared to leave Roanoke Island in 1587. Was it an ambush, a mass migration, or did something even more sinister occur? Raleigh himself was no stranger to controversy, a master manipulator with a genius for self-promotion. He'd been embroiled in numerous scandals and disputes throughout his career. Did White's colony fall victim to Raleigh's reckless ambition or the darker forces of European colonization? The truth is, we may never know what really happened on Roanoke Island. But as we follow this trail of breadcrumbs from John White's watercolors to Elena Dare's cryptic messages, one thing becomes clear: nothing was ever as simple as it seemed. Years after his return to England, Raleigh will still be struggling to come to terms with the loss of his colony. His expeditions will continue to suffer setbacks and disappointments as he battles against Native American resistance in the New World. For White's family, those left behind at Roanoke Island, there will be no happy ending. Elena Dare's fate remains a mystery, her story intertwined with that of the entire Roanoke colony. It's said that some of her belongings were found on Croatoan Island, including a gold ring with the initials V.D. engraved upon it, Virginia Dare, the first English child born in the New World. In the midst of this tangled web of stories and motivations lies one unifying thread: John White's haunting presence. A witness to so much tragedy and loss, he becomes an almost mythical figure, forever linked to the fate of his lost colony. As we reflect on these events from a distance of centuries, it's clear that nothing was ever as clear-cut or straightforward as our modern sensibilities might suggest. History itself is a messy tapestry full of conflicting narratives, hidden agendas, and tangled motivations. The Lost Colony of Roanoke offers us a glimpse into this very complex web of interests and desires. Perhaps the final word on this enigmatic tale belongs to John White himself, who wrote, "I do now give over any expectation that ere I shall see you here again." As we listen to his words in these long-forgotten letters, we're drawn back into a world both familiar and yet utterly alien. What really happened at Roanoke Island? The answer will remain forever elusive. Yet as we immerse ourselves in this timeless tale of human endeavor and tragic loss, one thing becomes clear: nothing, no mystery or disaster was ever lost on Roanoke Island. The Lost Colony of Roanoke remains one of the most enduring mysteries in American history. In 1587, a group of English settlers led by John White established a colony on Roanoke Island in what is now North Carolina. But when White returned 3 years later with a fresh supply of food and more settlers, he found only signs of destruction and chaos. The colony had vanished, leaving behind no bodies, no signs of struggle, and no clue as to their fate. The word Croatoan, carved into a tree trunk, was the only hint at what might have happened to them. White assumed that the colonists had either been killed or taken captive by hostile Native American tribes, but he never found any evidence to support this theory. The most widely accepted theory today is that the colonists were absorbed into the local Croatoan tribe, with whom they had formed a tentative alliance before White's departure. This theory suggests that the colonists may have blended in with the tribe and adopted their customs and way of life. It's a fascinating idea, but one that remains purely speculative. As we try to piece together what happened to the lost colony, it's worth looking at the context in which they settled. Roanoke Island was part of the Outer Banks, a chain of barrier islands off the coast of North Carolina. The area was sparsely populated by Native American tribes, including the Algonquian-speaking Croatoans and the Tuscarora. The English had been eyeing this region for some time, hoping to establish a foothold in North America and gain access to its resources. In 1584, Sir Walter Raleigh, the Earl of Dorset, had sent an expedition to explore the coast of North Carolina. The team's leader, Philip Amadas, was impressed by the region's natural beauty and reported back enthusiastically to Raleigh. Raleigh saw an opportunity for England to stake a claim in North America and began to plan a larger settlement. He recruited settlers from various parts of England and commissioned John White, an experienced artist and cartographer, to lead the expedition. White had previously traveled with Amadas on his exploration trip and was familiar with the region. In 1587, White's party of about 100 colonists set sail for Roanoke Island, accompanied by a contingent of soldiers and supplies. They established a fort on the island, which they named Roanoke after the Algonquian word for garden. The initial settlement was marked by tensions between the English and the local tribes. White had forged an alliance with the Croatoans, who were allies of the English, but relations with other tribes remained strained. It's likely that the colonists struggled to adapt to their new environment, which included sweltering heat, disease-carrying mosquitoes, and treacherous weather. In August 1587, White's daughter Elena Dare gave birth to a baby boy named Virginia Dare, who is now recognized as the first English child born in North America. This event was seen as a significant milestone by the colonists, but it would ultimately prove to be a harbinger of disaster. In January 1588, John White prepared to leave Roanoke Island, taking with him his pregnant daughter and son-in-law, Ananias Dare. His intention was to return with a fresh supply of food and more settlers within a year or two. However, White's departure coincided with the arrival of a Spanish armada in the English Channel. The threat from Spain forced Queen Elizabeth I to divert resources away from her colonization efforts in North America. White's ships were caught up in this diversion, and he was unable to return to Roanoke Island as planned. As the months turned into years, White became increasingly anxious about the fate of his colony. He wrote several letters to his friends and acquaintances back in England, pleading for news from Roanoke. Finally, in 1590, a supply ship arrived at Roanoke Island with a new group of settlers, but when White and this party arrived, they found nothing but signs of destruction and chaos. The fort had been dismantled, the houses abandoned, and no sign of the colonists could be seen. White's search party scoured the island, but to no avail. It was as if the colony had vanished into thin air. White returned to England in 1590, convinced that his fellow settlers had been killed by hostile tribes or taken captive by the Spanish. However, he carried with him a deep sense of guilt and regret. He had left behind not just his friends and family, but also the promise of a new English settlement in North America. The disappearance of the Roanoke colonists sparked widespread debate and speculation back in England. Some blamed White for abandoning his fellow settlers, while others speculated that they may have been taken by the Spanish or Native American tribes. In the years that followed, Raleigh's colonization efforts continued to falter. He had invested heavily in the Roanoke venture, but it ultimately proved to be a costly failure. The loss of the colony weighed heavily on White's conscience, and he spent the remainder of his life trying to make sense of what had happened. In 1611, a group of English settlers established the Jamestown colony in Virginia, which would eventually become a thriving settlement. But it was too late for Roanoke. The colony remained a ghost town, a haunting reminder of the dangers and uncertainties that faced early colonization efforts in North America. The long-term consequences of the lost colony's disappearance were far-reaching. It marked a turning point in English colonization efforts, leading to greater caution and more careful planning in subsequent ventures. Raleigh's reputation suffered significantly as a result of Roanoke's failure, and he would never fully recover from it. However, the legacy of the lost colony has endured, captivating the imagination of historians, writers, and enthusiasts for centuries. In 1937, the state of North Carolina erected a monument on Roanoke Island, marking the site where the colony once stood. Today, visitors can still see the remains of the fort and the foundation of the settlement. The story of the lost colony has inspired countless books, films, and documentaries over the years. It's a reminder that even in the face of failure and tragedy, there is often beauty to be found in history. As we reflect on what happened at Roanoke Island, we are reminded of the complexities and challenges faced by early settlers in North America. In many ways, the lost colony remains an enigma, a mystery that continues to fascinate us today. Why did the colonists disappear? What drove them to abandon their homes and belongings? The truth may never be fully known. But one thing is certain, the story of Roanoke Island will continue to captivate our imagination for generations to come. As we look back on this pivotal moment in American history, it's clear that the lost colony has left an indelible mark on our collective psyche. It serves as a reminder that even the most seemingly insignificant events can have far-reaching consequences and profound effects on those who lived through them. In conclusion, the disappearance of the Roanoke colonists remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in American history. While we may never fully understand what drove their disappearance, it's clear that the legacy of this tragic event has shaped our understanding of colonial history, Native American relations, and the complexities of human migration. Today, as we reflect on this pivotal moment in our shared past, let us remember the words carved into a tree trunk by the colonists, Croatone. It may be just a faint echo from history's dusty pages, but it speaks to the complex and often fraught nature of cross-cultural exchange, where lives were changed forever. The lost colony's story serves as a poignant reminder that even in our darkest hours, there is always hope for redemption and forgiveness. And as we reflect on what happened at Roanoke Island, let us honor the memory of those who came before us, whose struggles and sacrifices paved the way for our present-day lives. On a small island off the coast of North Carolina, America's most enduring enigma beckons. The story of Roanoke Colony is one that has captivated historians and enthusiasts alike for over 4 centuries. Founded in 1585 by Sir Walter Raleigh's expedition, this fledgling settlement vanished into thin air, leaving behind only cryptic clues and tantalizing hints of its fate. July 25, 1590 marked the day John White, the colony's governor and father-in-law to its leader John Dare, stepped off a British ship onto Roanoke Island. White had been tasked by Queen Elizabeth I to establish a foothold in the New World, with the hope of claiming it as England's own domain. The venture was ambitious, but fraught with peril. The 108 colonists were met with sweltering heat, swarms of mosquitoes, and an unfamiliar land that seemed hostile from the start. White spent several months on Roanoke Island, collecting supplies and gathering support for his fellow settlers before departing in August of the same year to return to England. The plan was to leave behind enough food and water to sustain the colonists until he returned with fresh supplies and more settlers. What happened next has become one of history's most baffling mysteries. The very first written records from Roanoke reveal a haunting phrase carved into a tree, Croatone. This cryptic message, along with 2 other symbols, the image of a sun and an arrow pointing towards Croatone Island, are all that remain as testaments to the colonists' ultimate fate. Theories abound about what might have driven the disappearance, but one notion has gained traction. The colony may have succumbed to disease. In 2014, researchers from the University of Bristol analyzed bones discovered in a mass grave near Roanoke Island. Their findings suggested that the colonists died due to malnutrition and disease likely brought over from England rather than contracted locally. This theory is supported by the fact that similar diseases were prevalent among English settlers during this period. However, other theories persist. Some believe they might have assimilated into local Native American tribes, while others propose they may have fallen victim to hostile encounters or harsh weather conditions. An unsettling aspect of Roanoke's history is the role played by Sir Walter Raleigh himself. Many argue that Raleigh, ever a master of self-promotion and politics, used his association with Roanoke to further his own reputation. White's journey back to England took longer than expected due to bad weather. He finally arrived in 1590, but found that war had broken out between England and Spain. The English government, distracted by its battles abroad, seemed almost apathetic towards the lost colony. White spent the next decade lobbying for support to investigate Roanoke's disappearance. In a twist of fate, it was not until July 18, 1610, nearly 20 years after White's first departure from Roanoke, that English colonist John Pori returned to the scene of the vanished colony. His mission, tasked by Sir Thomas West, Lord de la Warr, was to explore and settle the New World once more. As Pori stepped onto Roanoke Island, he encountered a small tribe of Native Americans from the Croatoan Island, exactly as indicated on that fateful tree trunk in 1590. It is believed that some of the colonists may have integrated with this tribe, their disappearance effectively erased by assimilation into the local community. Some researchers propose an alternative explanation. What if Roanoke's fate was sealed not by human malfeasance or disease but by Mother Nature herself? On May 15, 1590, a devastating hurricane ravaged Roanoke Island. It could have destroyed homes and supplies, driving the colonists to abandon their settlement in search of safer ground. Despite these theories, we're left with more questions than answers. How did John White's colony vanish so completely? Was it an act of self-preservation or something far darker? Can we ever truly know what happened at Roanoke? One enigmatic figure, often overlooked in this mystery, is that of Elena Dare, the colony's resident astronomer and wife to John Dare. According to some accounts, she might have been searching for a celestial event. The 1585 alignment of Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars predicted an era of unprecedented change. What if, I ask you, we're looking at this story from the wrong perspective? What if the lost colony wasn't about disappearance, but integration, their legacy buried beneath layers of time and assimilation? Their tale may be as much a testament to human adaptation and resilience as it is to historical catastrophe. We'll likely never know the full truth behind Roanoke's enigmatic vanishing, but one thing is certain: this event has captivated humanity for centuries. Whether you see it through the lens of politics or tragedy, or perhaps even mysticism, Roanoke Colony's story stands as a poignant reminder that history can be both timeless and tantalizingly elusive. And so we are left with Croatoan, etched into our collective imagination like an eerie hieroglyph beckoning us deeper into the heart of America's most mysterious enigma. The mystifying tale of the lost colony of Roanoke, a chapter in American history that continues to captivate and confound us to this day. As we've explored, the seeds of their disappearance were sown long before they vanished into thin air. In 1585, Sir Walter Raleigh, ever the visionary, sent 3 ships to establish a foothold on Roanoke Island. Among them was John White, an artist and cartographer who would later become synonymous with this ill-fated expedition. His daughter, Elena Dare, gave birth to Virginia Dare, the first English child born in the New World, a poignant reminder of the settlers' desperate attempt to forge a new life. However, White's decision to return to England to gather more supplies and men ultimately proved disastrous. As he set sail across the treacherous Atlantic in 1587, a sense of unease began to settle over Roanoke. The remaining colonists, led by John White, struggled to survive on meager rations, beset by illness, disease, and internal conflicts. White's absence lasted for 3 long years as he fought to raise the necessary resources to save his beloved colony. In 1590, he finally returned to Roanoke, only to find that not a single sign of life remained. The abandoned fort, once teeming with activity, now stood as a haunting testament to the colonists' fate. Theories have abounded regarding their disappearance. Were they killed by Native American attacks, or perhaps absorbed into the local tribes? Some speculate that disease and famine took its toll on the weakened settlers, while others proposed that White himself might have been responsible for the colony's demise. Yet one fact remains clear: Roanoke's colonists vanished without a whisper of warning, leaving behind only cryptic clues, croatones scrawled on a tree trunk, an enigmatic message etched on a nearby post. As we reflect on this tragic tale, we are left with the echoes of White's anguished words: "They departed from me and left me to my fortune." The weight of their decision lingers, a poignant reminder that even in our most desperate attempts at building new lives, we are not immune to the capricious whims of history. As you drift off into slumber tonight, ponder this haunting question: what secrets lie hidden in the shadows of our collective past, waiting to be unearthed and understood?